Seems that we are live. All right, hi everybody. This is Iconoclast Podcast. I have no idea where my co-host is at the moment. He was invited. He hasn't decided to grace us with his presence yet. Hopefully, he will soon. But joining me is a good friend of mine, Erie Loch. From where do you live?
I live in Sacramento, California.
Okay. Well, why don't you just go ahead and give us the Reader's Digest condensed version of you.
Me,
Yes.
musically, what I've been doing
Whatever.
all my life?
Right.
Well, I have got a lot of fucking experience because I started doing this in 1983. So that tells you anything. I'll be 47 next month. But I started off before that being a little computer geek, and I started using music programs, really primitive music programs. Before that, on my old Commodore 64, which is really strange because a few years later, I bought this synth called an Ensoniq SQ80, and I didn't find out till many years later that it was actually two Commodore 64s put together into a synthesizer, made by the guy who originally made the Commodore 64. Really, really strange to me. But I spent a lot of years doing nothing but electronic music. I didn't actually know how to play any instruments at all. I knew how to play keyboards, which when someone says they play keyboards and not piano, it means that they haven't really had any lessons, or generally, I mean, it's not always that way. Some people think of keyboards as like clavinet, etc. But I actually sat down and learned how to play the piano and got really, really into that. And I decided I wanted to sing, so it took me many years to develop my voice to where I wanted it to be. My voice tends to be something more suited towards Broadway shows because I can sing really clearly and everything like that. So I spent, 5 years really learning how to sing, and then the next 15 learning how to fuck it up and scream and mangle that shit into 5,000 different voices. So that's the thing that people don't tell you. It's like, well, now you've got to develop your own fucking character. It's like, oh, okay. You basically end up becoming like a voice artist for cartoons and shit like that, you know. So you can do these kinds of voices, or yeah, you know, the screams and all the weird things like that, and my little girly voice as I sing in, and you know, shit like that. So I didn't start playing live until 1990. That was when I played my first show, and I was 21 when I played my first show, and I always make jokes about this because people are like, well, you know, to be popular, you have to be like a cute little kid, and you're 18 years old. I'm like, well, that was 3 years too late the first time I played my first show then. So started a band called Immediate. We did that for about 3 years. Didn't really understand the word marketing, so we basically played like a show every month for like 3 years. We had a lot of fun, played around Sacramento. I learned how to record myself. We started incorporating real guitar and other instruments rather than just synths. But it was kind of cool. We had like a live show where we actually played everything. There were no sequencers. There were no backing tracks. I mean, any of the keyboard parts, I had like, at one point, we had 3 different keyboardists and 2 drummers on stage. So we kind of experimented a lot with that. And then 93, 94, I decided I wanted to, because I'd been into industrial music my whole life, whole life. I'd been hardcore into industrial music since the mid 80s, like 86. I found Front 242 and it was like all over. Before that, I'd been into punk and metal and shit like that. And I was like, oh, industrial music. So I decided after many years of making, because Immediate was like soft, mellow stuff, and it was very melodic, but it was still dark, and kind of on the gothic side of things. But we decided I gotten together with a girl named Anna Christine, and we decided to do a band, or I decided, I came up with the notion of doing a band. We called it Luxed, and I was like, let's make industrial music, but let's have an unlimited palette. Let's have 2 lead singers. Let's use guitars, drums, real drums, fake drums, anything, and not think so much about where it all fits. So put that out. We got on an industrial label called 21st Circuitry in San Francisco, put out a couple albums with that, and that was exactly at the time when the industrial scene kind of went really techno. really, really did not like guitars or anything like that. And of course, I was like, fuck everybody, let's go heavier. But
So that must have been right around the Mortal Kombat soundtrack.
well, yeah, it was, yeah, right around that time. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that
And
that was when I kind of lost interest in industrial shortly thereafter.
yeah, well, and I think my problem was there were a whole bunch of bands doing the heavier stuff with guitars and things like that. What nobody talks about is what industrial music became. It became White Zombie and Static X and Rammstein. It went in that direction, and those bigger bands became huge. But then the underground went very electronic, very gothic, very everything like that. Nothing against that kind of music, just not my thing. I like something aggressive. And I ran an industrial dance club for 5 years in Sacramento called Biomech, and I would mix up all kinds of shit. I would play goth, I would play industrial, I would play the techno-ish, emo, or the electro stuff. I would play metal. I would play Sepultura while we were right in the middle of there, and then I put on D-Light, just to fuck with people. We had fun though; it was great. But people are always arguing with me, like, "Oh, well, yeah, but there is really, really aggressive industrial music that's just electronic." And I'm like, now add guitar to it and tell me it's not more aggressive. So they'd always argue with that and be like, "Oh yeah, I guess so." But anyway, that was all fun. I I I don't like to argue with people about their musical tastes anymore because it's just your musical taste. It's just your opinion. But when I was growing up, I've worked in a record store basically for the last 30 years. So I've had enough conversations about what people like and what they don't like. So anyway, we did Luxt, and we were going out on these tours. We went out with Hate Department, and we went out with Scar Tissue. We went out on our own. We were actually doing fairly well, but every time we'd go out on tour, it was like, okay, well, everybody has to like almost lose their job to go out on tour, and we're not making enough money to pay for all of that stuff. At that time in Sacramento, the scene was huge here. There were bands like Deftones were doing really well. Papa Roach just got signed and did really, really well. There were a bunch of like that new metal thing going on in Sac, and we were just like, you know what? Yeah, we're an industrial band. Fuck it. Let's just start playing shows with all of these other bands and not care. In 6 months, we became a really big band, and it was really strange because we're coming out there, we're playing this like industrial-ish stuff with a chick singing mostly lead, because at that time I was playing keyboards, I was back behind stuff. Actually, at the beginning of that, I was playing drums, so I was kind of pushed to the back. But for some reason, not giving a shit seemed to work. So we just pushed that. We eventually won. We have something in this area called the Sacramento Area Music Award, the Sammys. 3 of those, and we're in the Hall of Fame with people like Cake and Deftones and Oleander and other bands that have come out of Sacramento, Tesla and shit like that.
Wow.
And it was great for almost 3 years. We were playing 100 shows a year just in Northern California, and we had gone out on tours before that, but we hadn't really done the tour since we became more metal. Finally, at this point, we had real drums and everything like that. Because when I was playing drums, it was all electronic kit with electronic pads, which was great. But one night, I don't remember what happened. Something died. They didn't have enough electricity to run everything. I think they had enough electricity for the sound system, but not for the stage. So there was a band playing before us, and we're like, hey, can we use your gear? We just went out and played as a rock band, and we were like, oh, we got to get amps and real drums, man. Oh, yeah. And that's what we've been doing ever since. But then with Luxt, we went out on a couple tours. Anna and I had actually broken up, but it wasn't so much that we had broken up that had to do with the band falling apart. It was more she wanted to go in the direction of like pop music, like No Doubt. And we were an industrial band, and she could do that stuff really well. She could do the harsh, raspy stuff. wasn't really her forte to sing like that type of stuff. So she ended up getting us working with one group of producers down in LA, and then we worked with Brian Wheat from Tesla up here in SAC, and I was not happy doing that at all. You know, I've got the ability to make any kind of music I want, any way I want, and, you know, going into somebody else's studio and having them tell me how to do shit with me. Maybe that makes me crush, you old fuck, but I don't care. But eventually I was like, okay, spent 3 years trying to make other people happy in that time. We were like, okay, and she was always doing this. It's like, well, this guy says if we change this, then they'll like this. We worked with Bill Kennedy, like Nine Inch Nails fame and shit like that, and he was like, oh, you need to change this. You need to, Erie needs to not be on drums. You need to get a real drummer, and then Erie should play keyboards, and that's what we did. I made all these changes, and then that fell apart. And then it was like, okay, well, now they want to work with someone else. And she's like, we should change this and change this. I'm like, fuck, changing shit. You know, it's like we've got our thing. We're doing good at our thing. Let's just keep doing it until we find the right people. It's not trying to change for somebody else. It's actually just doing what you like to do. Oh, hey.
And it looks like we have Seamus with us.
Hi.
Hey, nice to meet you.
You've been drinking.
Well, it's more like I drank and then kind of passed out for a bit and then woke up and saw this was happening.
Hey, you're in Indiana. What can you do, right?
That's pretty much it.
So anyway, where was I? Oh, the demise of Lux. Basically, we started doing Blownload because I was like, you know what? I'm sick of trying to make other people happy. Let's make a fucking band that you can't even put on the radio. So
how did you get from you know, I guess from the ending of Lux, how did you get to the Lords of Acid Throw Coat tour you started? What year was that?
That's about a 5-year stint. That's a 5-year difference.
Wow.
The end of Lux, we had already been doing Blownload for a couple years, just as a side band, but Lux finally broke up. We really leaned into it. So we'd already been doing it for a couple years there. And we played a lot of shows locally. We put out an album, and it was going really, really well. And then our guitarist got addicted to Oxycontin and disappeared for a year. So that kind of fell apart. So it was like, okay, well, let's try and do something else. So we did like another side band called Shockhead and another side band called Raising Eden, which was kind of the same thing with a different name, which we're recycling that name for a new project we're doing now. But about a year after that, a couple of different people had mentioned we had gotten really, really big on MySpace. This is about the time that MySpace was actually good. We had about 20,000 followers, and they weren't like, you know, where you buy followers. It was actually where people had clicked, yes, we like you type thing. Yes, I was sending out requests a lot, but we had about 20,000 people, and we had made about 5 videos. We had put out 2 albums this time. Blumpkins of Mass Destruction came out after Ultra Vulgar. Ultra Vulgar came out, we did a full pressing of that. We had 2,000 copies, of which we still have a good 1,000. But we put out Blumpkins of Mass Destruction. It's like the album that wouldn't die, because I finished that 8 years ago when my son was born. And we started playing it live. We had a good lineup. We had a guy named Reed playing drums. You can see him in the video for Keep Sex Evil. Phil was playing guitar for us. He was the guitarist in the Keep Sex Evil video. He was actually the one he made that video. And then, God, you know, Blownload was like one of those bands that just kept having problems after problems after problems. Then, okay, so we had one guitarist who got addicted to Oxy. And then we got a new guitarist, and he was in the band. That was fine. Then our drummer got cancer.
Wow.
And because he got cancer, he started smoking a ton of weed all the time, which is fine, but I think his wife liked him staying at home smoking weed with her all the time. So he eventually beat cancer 6 months later and was actually considered clear after chemo and everything like that. And he was like, okay, yeah, start booking shows. So I start booking shows, and then he doesn't show up to the shows because his wife wants him to stay at home with him. So we killed that drummer. And then we got a new drummer and a new guitarist after that, because Phil left at the same time. And that guitarist got put in jail for selling weed. And it just goes on and fucking on. And which is really sad because that drummer at the time, his name was Rob, actually died last year, not from weed or anything. At least that was a good thing. So it's almost like, you know, I don't know if it's dangerous. It might be dangerous to be in Blownload. I'm not sure.
So you're sure you want to go through with this reunion?
Yeah, then that's the thing. We just keep coming back and keep coming back. So, no, by the time I got to, we did the Revco tour, and by that time we had gotten the lineup. Sprocket had moved up from San Jose, because I had posted on MySpace, we were looking for a drummer, and he was like, fuck yeah, I want to be in the band. He actually moved all the way up here, and my old friend, Goat, his name is Joe, Joseph Campbell. He's on Facebook, but that's that. Goat had actually played in a band with our old guitarist who got addicted to Oxy, la 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 la. That guy is now like a veterinary assistant. So, but Goat went out on tour with us with Revco, and we did a 2-month tour with Primrose Circus and Revolting Cocks. We were in a van and a trailer, and that was so fucking black. We didn't realize it at the time because money was really tight, so we were always like tense and upset and shit like that. But when we look back on that tour, we're like, man, that was a good fucking tour. We came back, and Goat, his band was mad at him for joining our band. So he quit Blownload. And within 8 months, we got offered the Lords of Acid tour. And that was Jesus, the last guitarist that was with us that you saw on the Lords of Acid tour, joined the band. Now, Jesus, I've known forever. He used to be in a band called the Beat Officers in Sacramento. They were another band that was really big when Lux was big. And I've actually had, well, actually, there was another guitarist in Beat Officers that was in Blownload for a very short time. La, 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 la. But Jesus, we kind of knew. I love Jesus, but he's a fucking loose cannon, to say the least. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll times 10. And I don't mind if you want to have a good time, but when it affects the show, when it affects the tour, when it affects being able to tolerate each other, the Lords of Acid tour, the way we got on the tour was we agreed to be the crew for Lords of Acid and Thrill Kill Cult.
Right.
Lords of Acid was no problem. I love them. They're all great. Thrill Kill Cult's a fucking train wreck. And yes, I will talk shit openly about those motherfuckers. Fuck those guys. Hey, fuck you guys. Oh, they thought we were their fucking assistants. You know, we were supposed to bring them every fucking thing they ever wanted. They were not supposed to ever let anyone on the bus. They let people on the bus because they were trying to get drugs from them, and ended up basically getting a gun pulled on me, and we had to like take this guy down. And their drummer, I basically grabbed the guy's wrist. Their drummer jumps over and starts punching the guy in the face so many times that he breaks his fist. So he's off the tour. So somehow this is my fault. Basically, those guys have been in a band forever, and they hate each other. Whether or not they want to admit it, they hate each other. So they make everyone's life hell. So we're on tour. We're supposed to be the crew for them. We've got offered this tour. They said, you be the crew. You can go on the bus. So you can sleep on the bus. So we get on the bus, and the bus is fucked up. The air conditioning does not have a thermostat. It's either on 100% or off 100%. This is the middle of fucking July in California. So we're sleeping in the back of the bus. The air conditioning is blasting at like 50 degrees because it's the only way that it gets to the rest of the bus. So we all get colds within like the first week. So we're all sick. We're supposed to be crewing for everybody. They were supposed to send the merch to LA the week before, but they didn't, so they sent it to Seattle the day we started. We were supposed to have a week to get all the merch ready. And on and on and on. I mean, if you could think of every single fucking thing that could go wrong, it went wrong.
Wow.
And then in Denver, Thrill Kill Cult decided they didn't want us in the back of the bus anymore because they wanted to be able to smoke weed in the back of the bus. Well, not just smoke weed, do any drugs. The bus driver was very, very adamant about not having any drugs on the bus. I was supposed to be the tour manager, so I told everybody, you can't fucking drugs on the bus. So, what do you know? Hey, what do? They have us kicked off the bus, so now we're traveling after Denver. This is like a week and a half into 29 dates in 30 days. We're in Denver, and they're like, you're not allowed on the bus anymore. We're going to rent you a van. They rent us a minivan.
Wow.
I can't even sit up straight in this Kia minivan. And we are now traveling in this thing and supposedly sleeping in this thing. And management got us a driver, which I love the guy. Call him Nick. His name is John Paranaski or something like that. We call him Ski. But fucking great guy. But I mean, waking up at 3 a.m. and seeing someone doing jumping jacks in front of the car, slapping himself in the face so he doesn't pass out while he drives you, a little scary. The first night he got a speeding ticket. I think he got like 5 speeding tickets the whole time. So we're riding in this fucking minivan for the rest of the tour, for the rest of the dates. I mean, so everyone's sick, hates each other. We finally, and I'm supposed to be doing tour managing, where they're supposed to be crewing, and we're driving separately from the bus. So I've got the bus driver calling me up, screaming at me because he can't find a parking place in Florida. I'm like, and whose fucking fault is this? So anyway, it was a train wreck behind the scenes. But those 30 fucking minutes on stage were heaven. That was those fucking so great, because we played to like between, I mean, low end probably 300 people a night, and high end about 1,000 people a night, and it was, the response we got on that tour was fucking phenomenal, and it was just heaven. But Jesus, being the rock and roll drug, whatever the fuck, well, fuck whatever, it's more like it. He would disappear halfway through the night, so we would have to load everything without him. He'd be off trying to bang some chick, or basically hanging out with Lords of Acid and kissing their ass every night.
Wow.
And yes, I'll say it to your fucking face, Jesus. So there was so much animosity brewing between the band members. There was just so much anger and hatred. Sprocket was getting pissed at Jesus all the time. Crash was pissed. Everybody was pissed at everybody, basically. But by the time we got back, Crash had full-blown pneumonia. To the doctor, they told me it was like a day from having pneumonia. And, I mean, I've never been that stressed out in my life. And all of this, mind you, I used to weigh 540 pounds. Right now I'm about 150 less than that. So I wasn't exactly in the best of shape. Not that I'm even now. But so we're talking about hell! It was hellish! But by the time I got back, it was almost like, hey, let's take 6 months off where we don't even talk to each other. And after that, we tried to get it back together about 6 months later, and just was not working. So after that, Sprocket ended up moving to San Francisco, Jesus moved back up to Placerville, and we stopped doing Blownload almost entirely. And I'd always said, people ask, oh, you don't do Blownload anymore? I'm like, oh no, I still do Blownload. I'm at it. That's my son.
Hello.
All right. No, get out!
Sorry.
Love you.
Love you. It was nice meeting you.
Mine's down on the PlayStation, so.
Yeah. That's one of them. I'm sure the other two will come out pretty soon, too. But
yeah,
we always said...
It's kind of disappointing for me to hear you say that about that Denver show, because that, for me, just being in the audience that night, that was such an insane experience. I mean, I had seen, like, I saw Lords of Acid and Thrill Kill Cult when they played in Memphis, Tennessee back in like in '96-ish. So I'd seen that tour before, but on the way home, all I could think about was grabbing the Blownload records. And I got home, there were 2 out at the time, I think, or 3.
Yeah, there was just 2 out at that time. Well, we had put out a remix record too called Lipstick on a Pig.
Right.
And when I say put out a record, I mean it was on iTunes.
Right.
But yeah, and that what that was management wanted us to be a little more electronic.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, I've got no problem with. That's my background coming from that. So when you saw us, we were doing kind of the electronic versions. We had like backing tracks and shit like that going on.
Right.
And, you know, works out great. I've got no problem doing both of those things. But the funny part about that was we got to Wisconsin, and we were getting a really good response every night. So Mars from Thrillkill gets me on the bus and says, we've decided we think we want a different opener. We don't think you guys fit on this tour. It's called the Sextasy Ball. It's about sex. Blownload out on the Sextasy Ball tour. He's all, well, we want something more like, you know, just a couple guys with synthesizers, you know, like electronic, whatever. I was just so burnt at this point. This is after the gun incident. This is after them kicking us off the bus. This is after everything. I go, fucking good. Go ahead. Call management. We'll have them rent us a fucking van and trailer. We'll take all of our road cases, because they were using all our road cases. We'll take all of the gear that you guys are using, because they were using our gear. I said, and we'll go the fuck home. And he was like, I don't think he realized any of that shit. He's like, okay. So I get off the bus, and I see him talking on the phone, and he's like throwing his hands, and he's like, like that. Never mentioned it again. Never came up again. It was like, I got stuck with, yeah, motherfucker. So yeah, that was you know, in looking back on it, fuck, it was a great time, but it was very destructive. I mean, I might as well have been on heroin. I probably would have been in a better mood. Just, it was bad. So I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't do any of that shit. I'm always the one driving. And I got no problem. People want to party, want to do whatever the fuck they want, to smoke it, whatever they want, anything like that. It's just after we play the show, you know?
Right.
Because that was the problem. Jesus would be fucking drunk by the time we get on stage. It's like, Crash loves to fucking drink like a fucking fish. So does Sprocket. The second we're off stage, they're all good with that. It's like, no, we got to be fucking professional, get on stage, and then fucking do your shit. And that was basically the situation every night. Every night, by the time we hit the stage, Jesus is like, I don't know what the hell he was playing on stage. That's why, like, now, the other night, Goat's guitar went out of tune, and he's like, oh, my guitar's out of tune. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Did you hear what Jesus was playing? It's okay. So, God, I feel like I'm telling tour stories. Pretty much what it is.
I'm sure your tour stories are better than my tour stories.
Yeah, you got bad tour stories?
No, it's just mostly me and my buddy riding our motorcycles halfway across the country with guitars on our back, stopping in at any pub that would let us play for beer money.
That's fun, though!
Exactly. It's just, it's a lot less glamorous road story and a lot more trying to convince some 60-year-old man at a country western bar that we're totally okay to play this country song and that we're not going to do any blue country.
You know, we've actually had to do that sometimes. We get to a town, we're double booked, and we're out. You just go to a fucking venue and say, hey, can we play? And it's worked a couple times.
Yeah, but our song catalog includes the Dirty Magazine song and the Girl You Love.
Yeah, exactly.
STD.
Yep. Well, there's so much we can't do with Blownload for that exact reason. People are like, oh, well, it's a little too extreme. That's why, if you ever wonder why Blownload's not on a record label, the record labels are scared to death of us. It's like, oh, I don't know, that's pretty extreme.
Nah, it doesn't surprise me. I picked up a few friends in bands along the way, and like some of them are on labels, most of them aren't.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and with Blownload, I don't know that it matters. I mean, I think that Blownload's the kind of fucking band where you just like call people and are like, hey, can we play at your venue? Fuck it.
But to be fair, I'd actually heard of a couple of your music projects before Mark called me onto this, and I was like, oh, cool. And like, I'm not like some music aficionado, so if I've heard of you, hey, you've probably made it.
That's awesome.
Well, Erie here has quite an impressive resume, especially lately, because I started following you. I think I reached out to you on Facebook like the
Yeah,
day after the show.
yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to tell you that I thought it was a great performance. I'd bought everything that was on iTunes. I'd bought on the way home that night. Um, I don't normally I listen to the band, the headliner, for a couple of days after the show. I was listening to Blownload. Not Lords of Acid, not Thrill Cult, both of which I love both of those bands.
We get that a lot. We get people, if they're into Blown, though, they're fucking into it. They're just like, oh, we know every fucking word of every fucking song. And I don't even know every word. If you've seen me on stage, you know I fuck it up every night. So,
Blownload is the band. You're the band that I have to prepare my friends for.
Yeah.
It's not like something that can just come on Pandora or something, and yeah.
I've had band members. I had a drummer not want to be in the band anymore because he couldn't, as he said, let his family members listen to it. Like they're like, oh, we want to hear your band. And he's like, oh, I can't let them hear it. I'm the kind of person who is just like, oh, my family members don't like it. I don't fucking care. But no, I know exactly what you mean. It's like people are like, hey, we can play you on the radio. No. Can you come and do an in-store at a record store? No. Are there going to be children present? No.
Well, I think I'm relatively sure the show here in Denver was an all-ages show.
Yeah, we always play. We do really, really well with all-ages shows. I mean, and seriously, what we're saying isn't any more harsh than like rap shows or anything like that. And most of those are actually probably a lot worse than what we're saying. The big thing people don't realize, I don't think they realize with Blownload, is that, yeah, we're talking about sex and we're talking about all this gross shit, but none of it is degrading towards anybody. I mean, most of it's about my sex life with my wife. I mean, that's what most songs are about, because she's just as sick and crazy as me. That's all consensual, that's all. But we play with so many bands who are like, oh yeah, we're like you. It's like, no, you're not. It's the difference between like the kind of guy who walked up to a girl he doesn't know and starts telling tit jokes, like, hey, what do you call a girl with big tits, or whatever the fuck else. Like, that's not Blownload. Blownload's more like, oh yeah, no, you don't want to hear this. No, I want to hear it. No, you don't want to hear this, really. No, I want to hear it. Okay, and they're like, oh, cool, It's like a secret joke between people. It's not in your face like, oh, guess what? I'm going to degrade you in front of everyone and try and humiliate you. We don't do that. That's more like I'm making fun of myself. Oh, God, I got a great story about that. We were on the Revco tour. We played the fucking prestigious Fillmore Amphitheater, or whatever you want to call it, Fillmore Theater, in San Francisco. And we were playing Milfin USA, if you're familiar with the song Milfin USA.
Yes.
And someone we knew was out in the lobby, and this lady comes busting out of the doors and goes, oh, well, at least they're patriotic. I was like, yeah.
Wow.
It's not for everyone.
So how do you go from something that's like Blownload? And I'm not as familiar with Lux, but there was a similarity, kind of. You can definitely tell that you're very into the writing of both of those projects. How do you get from something like that to something as, to me anyway, it's kind of polar opposite as Dream and Red? And
oh, well, here's the problem with that. I get bored really easily. I have a job that I don't work a lot of hours, so I have a lot of time on my hands, and I also love to, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't party, I don't do any of that stuff. I like to work on music. I like to work all the time. Not only that, but I work really, really fast. So I tend to be like, hey, let's do this project, let's do that project, let's do this project. Also, I have this weird jealousy thing. If I hear a style of music and I don't know how to make it, even if I hate it, I'm like, I want to figure out how to get that sound. Like when dubstep came out, and I hate dubstep, but I'd been making synthesized music my whole life, and I hear all these weird noises. I'm like, how the fuck are they making all these noises? How do they have the computer power to have that many synths going on at the same time? Well, when I dug in and I actually figured out how to do it, I was like, oh, really? That's it? And then I'd already fucking made all this sounds, and I'd learned how to do all this stuff. It's good. It keeps you sharp, and you can be current, and you can make. I ended up using all the fucking sounds in a very unorthodox way, making Blownload songs with them and shit like that. It's like, oh, fuck it, I like the sounds. I don't need to, wah, 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 How many times can you hear that on a Kmart commercial, for kids, It's not my thing. But the whole EDM thing seems to be dying off anyway because of that. It's just saturated, just the same over and over again. But back to the original point, how is that completely different? I am at heart a pianist. I play pretty piano songs. I make pretty piano songs. I've got a pretty voice. That's one of the reasons right in the middle of a Blownload song, there's suddenly the take my hand, glide the... it's like suddenly all pretty and you've got all this piano shit. But that's the whole grinding gears thing. When you jam back, it's like that's what makes it fun. So really, Dreamin' Red is like Blownload without any of the heavy shit. But like I said, I get bored. I want to work on this kind of project. I want to work on this kind of project. I've when Anna was wanting to take Lux and turn it into a pop band, I actually learned how to write pop song structure. And it's very, very simple. I tell everybody it's the simplest thing ever. Go back to kindergarten. Then go back to preschool. Keep it simple as you can. The whole song is ding, 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 ding. That's 3 notes. That's the whole fucking song of Broke Down. And that's what people don't realize is to write something memorable. Where are you going?
I think. Is he okay?
Don't know. maybe I lulled him into to wanting to throw. But anyway, I learned how to write pop song structure, so that's part of what I like to do sometimes. I like to write pop songs, and I work with a guy named Derek Johnson, who I love to death, and he writes really, really complex guitar stuff because I'm not a great guitarist. Chunk notes. I think you needed another beer. But I work with Derek, and he can write this really, really complex guitar stuff, and then I shove really simple choruses into them, and that's what becomes the Dreamin' Red stuff. But I mean, I've got Dreamin' Red, which is like radio pop rock stuff. I've got Blownload, which is just riddling on acid. I've got Raising Eden is the new band that we're working on now, which is a serious metal project, which I'm working on with Derek. And
I'm really, really stoked to hear you do metal.
I'm
kind of biased. I'm really stoked to see you do metal. I'm
excited to do serious metal. I mean, the persona I love best is Blownload. I love being on stage and just being able to be like, because I walk out on stage and I just feel so fucking comfortable no matter where I'm at. We just played in Livermore last weekend to a bunch of like really, really metal people, and by the time we played, they were like, fuck yeah, because I know we're just gonna not care, and that's what they appreciate. But Raising Eden is definitely a very serious project, and there is some singing to it, and there is some song structure to it, but there's a lot of screaming. A little hard to pull off live because I like 3 different voices all the time, but we'll find the right people. I'm not worried about that. And then I've got Exogeist, which was a dubstep project that became something else. Who knows what the fuck it is? That I did that with my wife. She did a lot of the vocals on that.
And thank you for clarifying how to pronounce the name of that group.
Huh?
I have it on my phone. I've never known how to pronounce the name.
Exogeist?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant my wife, Adrienne. But no, Exogeist, we're actually turning into. It's almost like electronic music with Tom Waits-ish type shit.
Okay, that I can get behind.
yeah, grindy, fun, dark shit, you know.
Finally, something I can sing along to.
Yeah, and like I said, I like to cover a lot of ground. I like to do all kinds of different projects. Then we're working on the next Primitive Race record now.
Nice.
A couple of bigger, different. That's going in a very different direction. That's almost like punk rock this time, rather than like industrial shit. So.
Well, one thing that's confusing me about that band is it like a revolving lineup from track to track?
Yeah.
Was because I remember hearing at one point Burton C. Bell was involved, and then
Burton C. Bell was involved before Fear Factory got back together and started touring again.
Well, you mean before Dino rejoined the band?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right when he agreed to be in that was when Dino and him hooked back up, and they've been touring ever since. So there's a lot of people that were supposed to be involved in it. Chris Vrenna was supposed to originally be involved in it, and then there was some politics that I wasn't involved in, but he ended up moving to Madison, Wisconsin, so he was out of that. So he got a teaching position in Madison. So there, it's not just a revolving door. It just took so fucking long to finish that thing. My part in Primitive Race was pretty much done after the first 3 months, and then it was like waiting for 2 years, and then I kind of had to polish up shit at the end. But what was great about that is I ended up working with Tommy from Prong, and we really well together. And I wrote 4 songs on his last album with him. Do Nothing, Ice Runs Through My Veins, No Absolutes, and what's the track? With Dignity. So that went really well. We actually got to play with him about 2 weeks ago. That was awesome.
And I am so jealous of that collaboration because Prong was like one of the first.
I would be
bands
too.
I really
Prong is like one of my favorite bands of all times. When people used to ask me, what are your influences? Prong was always in the top 5. It was always Prong, this. Because, I mean, that's the kind of metal I'm into. Like, really, really razor sharp, but very just big, meaty pieces. Not, a lot of some of that, but not tons of it. But he's working on a new album now, and I already wrote 8 songs and sent them to him, and we'll see what he uses out of that stuff. So,
wow,
pretty exciting. He's with Raising Eden. What's really cool about Raising Eden is we've gotten some good collaborations. Virus from Dope and Device already played a solo on one of our tracks. Riggs from Rob Zombie and Scum of the Earth already played a solo on one of our tracks, and Tommy's supposed to play a solo on one of our tracks.
Wow.
And Merv from Powerman 5000 is supposed to do like some bass work for us too.
Wow, I'm jealous of your life.
Well, what's weird is like I've gotten to meet a lot of the people that I grew up having my musical heroes. I've gotten to work directly with Chris Vrenna. I've gotten to work with Al from Ministry and all the stuff like that, and it's what I always used to say. People are like, oh, I want to meet this person. I'm like, I want to work with them. So yeah, I got to actually do what the fuck I always said I wanted to do. It's like meeting them. When I meet people, I feel like really all shy, like, I like you, okay, hi. But when you get to work with someone, that's fucking awesome, dude.
So what's next? I mean, I know you said you got new Raising Eden. Is there going to be any plans to leave California, play outside of the state?
Well, every single thing that I do, with every breath that I take, is trying to get back out on the road. I love playing live shows. I do not enjoy playing locally because there's such politics about playing locally. And especially in a town like Sacramento that used to have a good music scene, so people have an attitude about it. It does not have a good music scene now. It is shit. We've got 2 all-ages venues, maybe 3 if you count the punk all-ages venue, but there's just a lot of politics and backstabbing and people not wanting to get involved. This is a very community of people who work in and around San Francisco, and a lot of them just live here, so they never really get involved in anything in the town unless it's like Bonnie Raitt type blues projects, or things like that. There's no real scene left in this town. But when we go on tour, especially with Blownload, especially with the heavier projects, it's just like every single fucking town you go to, they're not jaded. They're excited to see you. Unless it's a big city. New York. That's always what we call big city syndrome. You go to the big cities, everybody who lives there is seeing everything. They're just like, what the fuck? You go out to the places like, middle of Iowa. You go to Denver. You go to, Kansas City, and people are excited your band has come to town, and they'll fucking actually go out and see something. What we're trying to do right now with Raising Eden, actually looks, we're talking to different levels right now, and go with that. The weirdest thing is, the biggest problem about getting back out on tour now is that most of the people in my band are too successful in their regular lives. They've all got really good jobs that they can't just leave for 4 months. They lose that job, and when you make $35 an hour, it's not exactly the best thing to lose your job that way. I'm more in a position. I've always been a dirtbag. I've always worked. I do artwork for a record chain, so I've worked my way up to where I work my own hours and everything like that. So I can pretty much do whatever the fuck I want. And then we've got, our drummer Sprocket. He doesn't really have anything going on. He can leave whenever he wants. But getting the other guys to be able to go out on tour is the hardest fucking thing. But we're getting there. And it's really frustrating because I know you're always like, oh, come out and play Denver. I'm like, oh, you don't know how much I fucking want to. But right now, Goat and I are writing the new Blownload record. We're finishing up the new Raising Eden record. And the Exogeist record. Why? Because I finally have my studio back, which I'm sitting in finally, and I've got a brand new system because I've had the same computer for 10 years. So every time I would work, it was about 60% of the time I would be in here was just wrestling with the computer trying to get it to not, basically get it to do what I want to. I'd have to redo all the settings every time. It would be like, okay, let's do a guitar track. Got to redo all the settings. Okay, let's add another one. Computer's crapping out. Okay, I've got to freeze all these tracks. So we've got to sit here for an hour waiting for the computer to process. Fuck that. Now I've got a streaming system. I don't have to deal with that shit anymore. So I can actually work fast.
Nice. I know I am so excited to hear a new Blownload record because, I've grown to appreciate all of your other projects for the most part. Except for the Lux records. I don't have those yet. But I
don't have them either.
Really?
I actually don't have any copies of 3 of the albums.
Wow.
When that whole thing split up, I think I actually have somewhere in a box down at the studio that we practice at, I have the original masters of those albums. That's about all I have. I don't have the artwork or anything.
Wow.
Of course, I have 4,000 copies of our last album because we were on a small label and they were like, okay, we sold your first 2,000, make another 2,000. So we went and did it, and then oh no, we didn't sell those 2,000. We found them.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a clusterfuck.
Well, I know the Lux stuff is on iTunes, and I do think about it from time to time. But then I know you had told me on Facebook one day there was some bad blood between you, and I was like, do I want money going to?
Honestly, I don't have any bad blood where I don't want her to make any money. She's the one who has all of the Lux stuff up on iTunes. She never asked me. She just did it. I just don't give a fuck, dude. I just don't care. I loved doing Lux. It was great while it lasted, but that was kind of like training camp for me. That was the shit I made to learn how to get to where I'm at now. So, when people come up to me and they're like, oh man, I love Lux so much. I'm like, thank you, that's great. Have you heard my new fucking shit? I've moved on. I've done new things. I've done different things. And most of the people, and I understand, I get it. They're like, oh, I really miss Anna. I really miss, it's like, okay, well, why don't you go see the stuff she's doing now? Ah! She's not doing anything now.
So she hasn't moved on. She's not. She
hasn't done music since the day that I fired her.
And now you're remixing records for Ministry. And
Yeah, she did an interview with someone a couple of years ago, right after I was doing when I started doing all the stuff with Ministry. This is before because I spent about 4 years doing remixes for fucking everyone when we weren't playing live, which drove me insane. And she did some interview and she was talking all this shit like, well, they wouldn't be doing all of this stuff with all these big name people if it wasn't for me. And I'm just like, oh, whatever. I don't know, dude. Believe what you want to fucking believe. Last year she called me up and she's like, I've got these people and they want to do a Lux reunion and they really want to have us get together and do a show. What do you think? I'm happy without you and you're happy without me. Let's keep it that way.
yeah.
It probably doesn't help that she pissed off my wife, my current wife. So that's not something you do. My wife's a bit of a firecracker.
Yeah. I interact with her quite a bit. So.
Yeah, and her horrible spelling.
Yeah.
I have deciphered all of her messages.
What, you haven't picked it up like a second language yet?
Huh?
You haven't picked up her typos like a second language yet?
Yeah, it's like I was talking about the Facebook speak thing. It's like pretty much whenever I read something someone's typed, I kind of know I've kind of already figured out what the fuck they're saying. Probably helps that I constantly get messages from her.
I do know that on Facebook you definitely keep me in check.
I definitely what?
You keep me in check quite a bit on Facebook.
Oh, I love to give you shit.
Yeah.
I love to give you shit about your absolutisms. This absolutely is this. Well, maybe not. Fuck you, Erie! Shut up! Slayer!
Yeah, and that's another thing. I don't know where the Slayer thing started. Yes, I like Slayer, but the sad thing is they're really not even in my top 10. I mean, I love them, but I'll see them anytime they're in town. But...
Well, that's my whole thing, though, is like, I always tell people, it's like, I don't dislike bands. I mean, almost any band, even the band I fucking hate, I can find one or two songs where I'm like, that's pretty good. Yes, there are some fucking Nickelback songs that I listen to and go, no, I'm serious. And I go, that is a well-written song. I mean, it doesn't mean I still don't want to punch the guy in the face when I hear it, but I'm like, that's actually a well-written song. I can respect that. So it also comes back to, as a musician, musicians are fucking hilarious because they want to be really opinionated about music, but then they want to make music and have people hear it. And it's like, well, they're going to be just as harsh to you as you are about everything else. My attitude usually is like, I never ask anyone's opinion. And it goes back to the first fucking show I ever played. Some girl just fucking magically appeared, and she was like, and I was asking people as they left, what'd you think? What'd you think? And one guy actually said, it needs more flute. I know! She's like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, I was just, wanted to ask people's opinion. She's like, why the fuck do you care? Why do you care what they think? If you want to make music for people, make it, and if they like it, they'll come to your shows and they'll buy your shit. You don't need to hear their opinions. And it's true, when you give someone a license, when you say, hey, what do you think about this? Then they're going to sit down and go, oh, well, then I've got to be a critique. Well, you know what? You should change this, and you should change that. When people ask me that all the time, they're like, hey, man, can you listen to my mix? I want you to give me your opinion on my mix. I'm like, no! Just do your fucking thing, dude, because even if I tell you, you know what, I would do this and I would do that, that's just what I would do. That doesn't mean I'm the fucking best at everything. But that gives me license to not fucking care what anybody thinks about my mixes. Like, okay, here's my fucking album. Oh, well, the snare could come up. Come up your fucking ass.
Oh, I would love to be a fly on the wall sometime at one of your recording sessions. Just once.
It's usually me by myself. Well, Blumkin's Mass Destruction, people don't even know. I did everything on that album. There wasn't a single person involved in that album but me.
I actually, full confession, I listened to that album in its entirety this morning. When I was out, I went to hang out with a buddy of mine, and just the whole way over there, I had that cranked up.
I want to get, and you know what, I've talked to Goat about this. I want to do 6 Pound Flaps live.
Wow.
It's a fucking, what, 7-8 minute song with like 5 million changes in it, but we've never actually tackled it and said, hey, let's fucking actually do this live. It was more like, that was the song that I worked on for a good month, not like sweating over it, just like, fuck it, today I'm going to add another minute to it. And then just like, which style am I going to do now? It's fun.
That's a very eclectic track.
Oh, yeah. A lot of different styles on that. And I don't try to even nail it down. I work with Derek, like I said, and he's always like, oh, this should be more like a metalcore thing, or this should be more like a this, you know. Like, I don't even know what those fucking genres are, dude. Like, I'm just making music that sounds like something I heard. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Sounded like that.
What was that? Was that you, Seamus?
Yep.
Yeah, that is a byproduct of, apple cider and tequila.
Oh, good Lord, man.
Well, at
Dude,
least
you
can-
don't have to live in Indiana. You can go someplace that has people that do things.
Well, Indiana does have people that do things. They're just 2 hours north of me in Indianapolis.
I don't know, man. I couldn't do it. I have to be in a city. Like
I have-
even Erie, my son's mother, she's actually considering a move back to California, and she asked me if I wanted to come along, and I'm like, no, I want to live somewhere that has rain. You know?
You know, I fucking love living here as, like, there's no bullshit. It's not, like, highly political. There's not a ton of rednecks. Well, there are a ton of rednecks, but you can kind of ignore them because they're outnumbered. You know? So it's a good place to live. It's expensive compared to a lot of places across the country, but you also get paid more. But I love living in Sacramento because if I want to go to the big city, San Francisco's an hour and a half away. I see shows that way. I can go do big, you know, what you would consider big city stuff. You know, I can drive to LA in 8 hours if I want to. But it's just, I'm the scary one here. I like that.
I can imagine. How do your kids explain what Dad does?
Oh my God, my son, the one who just came in, Max, he's always saying, it's so cool that you're famous. I'm like, I'm not famous. I took both of them to the first live show they've ever seen me do. And, you know, a good 150 people there. It was a good show. It was great. It was, you know, they're just like over the moon, like, oh my God, my dad's famous. Everyone knows who he is. I'm like, within a 10-mile radius.
Yeah, no, I know how you feel.
Yep. But hey, whatever he wants to believe, I'm good with that.
Well, we're actually right at an hour. I know you probably want to get back.
Yeah, you know, I actually go in before I get divorced, so.
Well, give your wife my apologies.
Oh no, she's good with it. She's actually probably just getting home right now. My 17-year-old's inside taking care of the little one, so I'm good with that. But if she comes home and I'm out here, I'll hear about it. Which I don't mind.
Well, we'll stick
Thanks
around.
for doing
I'm here in just a moment. I'm actually going to end the broadcast, but stick around after for just a second, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Just to give everybody an update on what's going on with the future podcast, I'm going to be building a new computer box, hopefully within the next month or so, waiting on a quarterly bonus from work to get all that put together.
So you're going to be
Really-
joining me with like a really badass PC?
Yes. I will be building my own. So, yeah, I found out that there's a problem with the motherboard. The RAM I bought didn't work. It was just kind of a clusterfuck. So, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just going to build a new box and start from scratch on it. This will be an
I'll link you to the CPU I'm using, dude. Once you go 12 core, you'll never want to go back.
Oh, good lord. I don't think I need that. I have a sound card already. That's going to do most of the heavy lifting. So.
Yeah, my sound card was overpriced, but man, is it a nice sound card.
Yeah. Well, that is it for the broadcast. Like I said, this will be on YouTube. Eventually, I'll get around to doing an audio mix of it, cleaning it up a little bit. posting that on SoundCloud for now while I figure out this whole.
Well, I just finally thought to do something, Mark, so you're probably going to get a little bit more exposure.
Okay.
I just kind of finally thought to share the link to my, 1,000 Facebook fans.
Well, I'm personally counting on the tags I'm going to add in YouTube for Erie. So
Yeah.
I'm exploiting my friend. Shane.
Hey, go for it. I'm all about promotion.
Hey, I might even link it to my subreddit.
Oh, good lord.
Well, my subreddit has 5 million followers.
Uh-oh.
In the world is that?
I better go.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Erie. We
Thank
will.
you so much for having me. That's fun.
All right.
Should do it again.
Oh, for sure.
Nice to
Want me to
finally put
hang
a
up
face to the name, Erie.
All right. Peace out, y'all.
Yeah.